Hello and welcome. About a year ago I published a video on co-integration. We went through the theory, implemented the augmented decay Fuller test and built a full scanner across the entire S&P 500. If you haven't seen it, link is in the description. Watch that first because today we are picking up exactly where it left off. Today we are building the backtest. We take the co-integrated pairs we found, compute a rolling spread and z-score, generate signals and simulate actual trades. Before we start, this notebook is deliberately simplified to keep the code readable and understandable. There are things missing that a real strategy would need. I'll flag every one as we go with what you do instead. The main ones in a nutshell: pair selection uses the full data set. The thresholds are hard-coded. There are no transaction costs, no stop losses, and the capital doesn't compound. We pull the S&P 500 ticker list from Wikipedia and download daily closing prices from January 2020. Roughly 500 columns, one per stock. Simplification, survivorship bias. We are using the current S&P 500 constituents and looking back to 2020. Companies removed since then, bankruptcies, acquisitions, underperformers are missing. This makes the data cleaner than reality. A proper dataset uses point-in-time constituent lists. We generate all possible pairs using combinations, over 120k of them. We filter to correlation above 0.98 to get co-integration candidates. By the way, this is optional, I'm just doing that for filtering purposes. You can also pick 0.95, it depends on what you're interested in. High correlation is often related to co-integration, but doesn't have to be. For each candidate pair, we run an OLS regression, extract the residuals and test them with the ADF test. P-value below 0.01, the residuals are stationary, the pair is co-integrated. Ranked by ADF statistic, most negative first. Again, the full explanation of the ADF test is in part 1. Simplification, look-ahead bias in pair selection. This is the most important limitation in the notebook. The ADF test uses data from 2020 all the way to today. We then backtest on that same period, meaning we used future data to decide which pair to trade. The fix is simple and I've covered that in many of my previous videos, so let me know if you need a video link. You just use data up to, let's say, the end of 2022 to find the pairs, then you backtest only on 2023 onwards. Without that split, the results will be, let's say, likely to be very optimistic. Extension, walk forward selection. Rerun the co-integration scan on a rolling training window. Every 6 months, re-identify the best pair using only past data. Trade the next 6 months. This is walk forward analysis, the standard way to eliminate this bias. We take the top ranked pair and set a 30-day rolling window. For every trading day, we look back 30 days, rerun the OLS regression and record fresh alpha and beta estimates. The hedge ratio between two stocks drifts over time. Re-estimating every day keeps us adapted to that. Obviously, the first 30 values are NAN values. There is not enough history yet. No trades fire during that period. Simplification, 30-day window is untested. 30 days is reactive but noisy. The right window let's say 60, 90, 252 days, depends on the pair. In a real strategy, you test multiple lengths on training data only. The spread is how far stock 2's actual price deviates from where the regression says it should be, the residual. Recomputed daily using rolling alpha and beta. We z-score that spread over a 30-day rolling window. A z-score of +2 means the spread is 2 standard deviations above its recent average. Stock 2 expensive relative to stock 1, expected to revert down. A z-score of -2 means stock 2 cheap, expected to revert up. That mean reversion is the entire bet. Now we define entry and exit thresholds. In this case, when the z-score drops below -1.5, we go long the spread. In practice, that means we buy stock 2 and short stock 1. We are betting that stock 2 is currently undervalued relative to stock 1 based on the historical relationship, and that this gap will close. When the z-score rises above +1.5, we do the opposite. Short stock 2 and buy stock 1, because now stock 2 looks expensive relative to stock 1. We exit either position when the z-score reverts back inside 0.5, meaning the spread has returned close enough to its mean that the trade has played out. Simplification, hard-coded thresholds. The thresholds of 1.5 and 0.5 were chosen by visual inspection of the z-score chart, not through any systematic optimization. A tighter entry threshold like 1.1 would fire more trades but on weaker signals. The spread is less dislocated when you enter, so there's less room for it to revert in your favor. A wider threshold like, let's say, 2.0 means fewer trades, but each one is more extreme dislocation with more mean reversion potential. In a kind of rigorous setup, you'd run a grid search over multiple combinations on a training period and log in the best values before ever touching the test data. Now to the heart of this, the backtest loop. The variable position tracks where we are at any point in time. 0 means we are flat. 1 means we are long the spread, and -1 means we are short. We can only hold one position at a time, so any new entry signal while the trade is already open is simply ignored. Entry bar I+1 is a small but important detail. The signal fires on bar I. That's today's closing z-score. But we don't fill at the same closing price because we only know today's close after the market has already shut. By the time the signal exists, trading is over for the day. So the order goes in after the close and fills the following bar. This avoids a very common mistake in Python backtests where people accidentally enter at the exact same price that generated the signal. Is more significant the higher the time frame you pick. So if you're playing with 1 minute time frames, 5 minute time frames, it doesn't really matter, but on daily time frames it definitely matters. That said, the fill uses bar I+1's closing price, which is still not perfectly realistic. If you place a market order after today's close, you'd actually get filled at tomorrow's opening price, not tomorrow's close price. You'd have to hold through the entire next trading day to get a close fill, which isn't how market orders work. Simplification, therefore, fills use next day close instead of next day open. The proper fix, super straightforward, super easy, is to download open prices alongside close prices. Then use df open of whatever stock, ilog I+1 for all entry and exit prices instead of the close. We skip this here to keep the notebook working with a single price data frame, the 1-day delay is already in place. Open versus close is a smaller secondary correction. Now, this is where a lot of pairs trading implementations cut corners. We don't put equal dollar amounts into both legs. Instead, we scale the stock 1 leg by the rolling beta from our regression. The reason? Beta tells us how many dollars of stock 1 move for every dollar of stock 2. If beta is, for instance, 0.7, then for every dollar stock 2 moves, stock 1 historically moves about 70 cents in the same direction. So if we want to isolate the spread and only the spread, we need to put 70% as much capital into the stock 1 leg as the stock 2 leg. If we used equal dollars, one leg would be oversized relative to the other, and we'd end up with an unintended directional bet on whichever stock dominates. By incorporating the rolling beta, the position stays close to market neutral and the P&L is driven by whether the spread reverts and not by which direction the broader market moves. Now, in terms of the P&L calculation, for a long spread trade where we bought stock 2 and shorted stock 1, the profit on the stock 2 leg is simply shares times the price increase. The stock 1 leg was a short, so if stock 1's price went up while we held it, that's a loss for us, which is why we subtract that term. For the short spread, it's the exact mirror. We shorted stock 2 and bought stock 1, so all the signs flip. The symmetry here is a good sanity check. Both cases are structurally identical, just with opposite signs. Now, just an optional warning here: if the dataset ends while we are still in an open trade, meaning the Z-score never hit the exit threshold before the data ran out, that position is dropped entirely and a warning is printed. You can also mark to market that position. I've done that in many of my previous videos. For now, it doesn't really matter. If you do it like this, how I did it here with a warning and just dropping it, it doesn't contribute to the total P&L, so keep that in mind when reading the results. Simplification, no transaction costs. Every round trip involves 4 executions, opening and closing both legs. In reality, you pay commissions and bid-ask spread on all 4. A conservative estimate is around 0.05% per leg, so 0.2% per round trip, just 0.05 times 4. On a 1K position, that's about $2 per trade, which sounds small, but becomes material if you account for, let's say, 80 trades. Simplification, no stop loss. If the spread widens and keeps widening without ever reverting, this strategy holds the position indefinitely, accumulating losses the entire time. In practice, you'd cut the trade if the Z-score exceeds something like, let's say, 3.0, because at that point the spread is behaving in a way the model didn't anticipate, and continuing to hold is just hoping at this point. So a maximum holding period of, say, 30 days is another common safeguard you can pick here. Simplification, fixed capital. Every trade is sized based on the same 1K US dollars, regardless of how the strategy has performed up to that point. There is no compounding and no risk scaling. That means the total P&L is a raw dollar figure, not a percentage return you can meaningfully compare to anything without knowing how much total capital was deployed. Now to the results for this single pair. Obviously, you can run that for a whole lot of other pairs here out of the selection. This is just for one single pair, and the result doesn't tell you anything. Also keep all these simplifications in mind. So you see the total P&L comes off positive, but do not stop here. So take a look at least the equity curve, and in the best case also at other metrics. We'll get to that in some seconds. So if you just take the cumulative sum, you see the development of the strategy, And this equity curve tells the real story. The strategy opens with an immediate $250 loss on the first few trades, recovers to a peak of around, 450-ish by trade 6, and then grinds steadily down to minus 350 by trade around 50-ish. That's a peak to throw drawdown of over $800 on a $1,000 per leg strategy. In practice, almost no trader, including probably me and you, would have held through that without pulling the plug. And if you have stopped at trade 52, you'd be sitting on a significant loss with no recovery in sight. Then look at the tail end of the chart. So trades 70 roughly through 80-ish produce a near vertical spike that rescues the entire result back to positive 400-ish. So the strategy's profitability essentially comes down to 2 or 3 trades at the very end of the data set. That's just a serious red flag when results depends this heavily on a small cluster of late trades. You can't tell whether that's a genuine edge or just noise. And given that the pair was selected using the full data set, including those final trades, we generally cannot answer that question with this backtest no. 80 trades over roughly 5 to 6 years is also a very thin sample, about 1 trade per month, roughly ballpark. So to draw any statistically meaningful conclusions, you'd want hundreds of trades across multiple pairs and multiple different market environments. This result is interesting, but it is not evidence of a real edge yet. So technically positive, but not tradable as is. Drawdown is too large relative to the gains. Sample is too small. Recovery is too concentrated in a handful of late trades. Green P&L number means almost nothing without understanding the path that got you there. If you want to go further, win rate, profit factor, Sharpe ratio, max drawdown as a number. Trade history has everything you need to compute those. I leave that up to you. Now, the full notebook is available to channel members. Apply all the extensions I mentioned. Get rid of the simplifications. Do a walk forward analysis. Kalman filter pairs trading. Multi-pair portfolios. If that's what you want to test, let me know. Happy to do a follow-up video on that one. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching. And I'm looking forward to seeing the upcoming videos. Cheers. Bye-bye.